The Navy's Ford-class nightmare has only one solution: diverting funds and resources away from future Ford-class carriers beyond 2028 will help the Navy determine priorities. First, the Navy will need more Virginia-class attack submarines. Summary and key points. The Navy's continued focus on building Ford-class carriers, despite the growing threat of anti-access/area denial, ATO/AD systems from adversaries like China, is increasingly seen as an outdated and expensive strategy. These carriers, while powerful, are expensive and vulnerable to modern missile technology, making them a liability in a future conflict. Critics argue that the Navy should prioritize investments in submarines, unmanned aerial vehicles, hypersonic weapons, and directed energy weapons, rather than continuing to build new carriers that may be ineffective in modern warfare. Since World War II, flat-bottomed aircraft carriers have been the centerpiece of the U.S. Navy's surface fleet, America's primary projector of maritime power. A fleet without the newest, largest, and most advanced floating airbase just wouldn't be the same. Of course, the carrier argument is very similar to the one that battleship advocates made 80 years ago. Back then, battleships were the centerpiece of the U.S. Navy's power projection, and carriers were seen as odd extras in the fleet. Today, the Navy and its supporters in Congress operate as if it were still 1999. There is no real challenge to America's military dominance. Carriers can come and go at will anywhere on the planet. All locals can do is stand in awe of American power when carriers show up to begin imposing their will on foreign shores. Leading the charge against America's continued global dominance is none other than the People's Republic of China, PRC. While China has built up its own carrier force, Beijing is more interested in taking away America's #1 naval power projection platform, the aircraft carrier. China plans to do this thanks to its powerful arsenal of anti-aircraft/area denial, ATO/AD systems that could essentially sink or seriously damage a carrier in the event of a conflict between China and the United States. These ATO/AD systems are far cheaper and easier to replace than American carriers. That's one reason why China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have all invested huge sums in their respective ATO/AD capabilities. The cost imbalance creates a strategic imbalance that would likely favor the militaries of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran if there were a clash between their ATO/AD capabilities and American carriers. The Ford-class carriers are the Navy's next-generation aircraft carriers that are slowly under construction. They are intended to replace the existing fleet of 11 Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. So far, the Navy has deployed the first ship of the class in 2021, the USS Gerald R. Ford, and the next unit, the USS John F. Kennedy, CVN-79, is due to deploy in 2025. After that, in 2028, comes the USS Enterprise, CVN-80. Finally, the USS Doris Miller, CVN-81, is due to deploy in 2032. The USS Gerald R. Ford cost $13 billion and took more than a decade to roll out of the shipyard. A year after its launch, in 2022, it is still having technical problems. The next carrier in the class is expected to be cheaper, but the fact remains that it is so expensive, so time-consuming to build, and so complex and expensive that it is irreplaceable. Given the money already allocated to this warship, it would be difficult to cancel these systems. However, future systems are indeed discontinuable, especially if the U.S. military has not developed a meaningful anti-ATO/AD system or anti-hypersonic weapon system for the carrier. The USS Gerald R. Ford cost $13 billion and took more than a decade to roll out of the shipyard. A year after its launch, in 2022, it is still having technical problems. The next carrier in the class is expected to be cheaper, but the fact remains that it is so expensive, so time-consuming to build, and so complex and expensive that it is irreplaceable. Given the money already allocated to this warship, it would be difficult to cancel these systems. However, future systems are indeed discontinuable, especially if the United States military has yet to develop a meaningful anti-A2/AD system or anti-hypersonic weapon system for this carrier.